for just being who you are and for your goodness, that you are good. Even though we are not, you're still good and you're always faithful. I just want to thank you for that, Lord. And I just want to pray for tonight and just pray over tonight, God, and just lift it up to you. We're going to be sharing about, the good works that we did for you in Hendersonville. And I just want to ask that those that are here that didn't go, that they would listen and that they would just see how you're working, God. Because you're always working. And even if we don't think that you are, if we don't, physically see it, you're still working. And I just hope that you'd open the eyes of those that didn't go, that they could see you working, God. And again, I want to pray for the people speaking. Just ask for their words to come out clearly, and that it would be words that you want them to say, God, not just what we want to say, but that you would speak through us and speak through them. And I just want to lift all that up to you and lift it all up in your name, God. Amen.
All right, you can turn to Matthew 28. All right, how many of y'all have heard of Charles Spurgeon? Okay, Charles Spurgeon is considered to be one of the greatest preachers who's ever lived. But Charles Spurgeon, you may not know this, he was saved at the age of 15. He was saved at the age of 15, 171 years ago. And the conditions that were going on when he got saved, there was a huge snowstorm in his town. And his pastor could not get to the church. And so a deacon was called on to preach. I don't know if he had time to prepare or not, but he was called on to preach. And he went up and shared a gospel message. And in that service, 15-year-old Charles Spurgeon got saved. Now, he would go on to live another 43 years, I believe. And nobody would have realized how God would use that man over those next 43 years. The amount of people that he would preach to, the amount of souls that would be saved through God working in his life. And it all started on a snowy day when a deacon who wasn't supposed to preach stood up to preach, and he didn't share a topical message, feel-good message. He shared the gospel. And Charles Spurgeon was saved. Now, God is still saving children and teenagers. We saw some of them come to Christ during Hendersonville. And he is using them for great things in his kingdom. Now, we know that every single one of us who's a believer in Christ are commanded to share the gospel. What is the gospel? It's the message of Christ's death and resurrection, and that he conquered sin. He stood in our place and took the penalty for our sin, and that through him we can have forgiveness and eternal life. Now, let's look at Matthew 28, verse 19 and 20, and all of you probably know this verse. Go, therefore. Now, I'm going to stop there for just a second. You see our sign back here? This is from a message we did a few months back, and where it says don't have to say go, you're already doing that. The way this is constructed in the Greek, it's basically saying as you're already going. Not that you're not going and you need to go, but that you're already going. You're already going to school. You're going to work. You're going to your friend's house. You're going to all these different places. You're already going. And so what it's saying here is as you go, as you're already going, make disciples of all nations. Now, that song that was in the video, when we downloaded it, we didn't know it had Spanish in it. But then after we listened to it, I was like, man, that's really cool, because we were at a Hispanic church. We were ministering to a lot of Hispanic people. Hendersonville is there is a large Hispanic population. And so really there could have been a better song to go with what we were doing. And it says, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Now, based on this verse, these two verses, who is a missionary? Who? We are. And who else? Who? Who'd you say? Matthew, okay. Who is a missionary? We are. Who is a missionary? Every Christian, right? Every Christian is a missionary. Every Christian. Now, not everybody goes to a foreign land. In 21 and a half years of being youth pastor, I've had a fairly good amount of people who have gone overseas. Most of them have been short term. We have had some people who have lived in other countries, like Andrew Stover, who lived in Turkey for 7 years. At the time that he lived there, you could not even say the country that he was in. Correspondence with him, you had to use code words. You couldn't say certain things. Now you're able to say where he was. He's now in Charlotte teaching at a Christian school. But the amount of people who have gone to other countries or served in other countries is fairly small compared to the amount of people that have been in the youth group. You're talking about probably thousands of people that have been in and out of this room. So not everyone who's a missionary goes to a foreign country. Not everyone who's a missionary does it for a living, meaning they're supported like Chad Harwell. Chad Harwell does not work what would be referred to as a secular job. His job is a Word of Life missionary, and he relies on support of individuals and churches to provide for he and his family, including our church, which gives to him every month. But not everybody earns a living through missions. And here's the key. We are the missionary wherever God has placed us. We are the missionary wherever God has placed us. Many of y'all have probably heard of Tucker's Grill. Tucker's Grill is a restaurant, and one of our church members, two of our church members used to own it. It's now on its third owner. And I was talking to the lady who owned it originally, and we were talking about the employees that she had and the influence that she had. And I told her, I said, Brenda, I said, for all purposes, you are the pastor of the Tucker's Grill ministry. I said, you've got these employees that are coming in here to your restaurant that are with you every day, and they're watching how you live, how you react, and you have a chance to pastor them, to minister to them. And the same is true for us. Wherever God has placed us, we are a missionary. Now, we are to proclaim Jesus as Savior and Lord to all nations. To all nations. And to make disciples. Notice he didn't say make converts. He said make disciples. A disciple is a follower of Christ. A follower. That's our goal, is to make disciples. People who follow Christ. And we go in obedience to God's call, and our desire is to give God glory. Now, we're going to look at a few verses before we get to the share time. Look at Matthew chapter 5 and verse 13. I want us to have an understanding about missions, that missions is not a trip. You are the salt of the earth. He's talking to us. This is Jesus. He says, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has become tasteless, how will it be made salty again? It is good for nothing anymore except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. When you take salt and put it on your food, you're doing it for flavor. But if you take that salt and dump it on the food and it doesn't taste like anything, there's no point in it, right? You don't need it. We are the salt of the earth. Now, turn to the right to Acts chapter 1 and verse 8. And when we were in Hendersonville, the minister at First Baptist Hendersonville preached in Acts. He made reference to this verse in his sermon because his sermon was verses 9 through 11 of the ascension of Jesus. These are Jesus' last words before he ascended into heaven. But you shall receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you shall be my witnesses both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and even the remotest part of the earth. This power that they would receive is the Holy Spirit, who had not come yet to indwell in believers. And basically what he's saying here is, listen, I'm going to give you the power to do what I'm calling you to do. Whatever the Lord calls us to, he provides the power that we need to carry out that function. Now, turn to the right to Acts chapter 20 and verse 24. How many of y'all have a life verse? Raise your hand if you have a life verse, a favorite verse, okay? This is my life verse. And I'm going to read it here because this translation is a little different, but this is a verse I've committed to memory. But I do not consider my life of any account as dear to myself, in order that I may finish my course and the ministry which I received from the Lord Jesus. And what is that ministry? What is that calling? To testify solemnly of the gospel of the grace of God. This was Paul's heart. This is what he was about. This is what he lived his life for. It's not about me. It's about sharing the gospel. Now turn to Romans 1:16. Romans 1:16. And a question that we could all ask is, are we ashamed of the gospel? Paul says, I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first, and also the Greek. You know, I just thought about another verse. Let's turn back to Acts chapter 4 and verse 12. Acts chapter 4 and verse 12. It says, and there is salvation in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven that has been given among men by which we must be saved. All right, turn to the right to Romans chapter 10 and verse 17. Let's look at verse 13 first. Whoever will call upon the name of the Lord will be saved. How then shall they call upon him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they preach unless they are sent? Just as it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring glad tidings of good things. However, they did not all heed the glad tidings, for Isaiah says, Lord, who has believed our report? Verse 17, so faith comes from hearing, and hearing by the word of Christ. Now, last verse, 1 Peter 3:15. 1 Peter 3:15, turn to the right. First Peter 3:15. Everybody there? 1 Peter 3:15. But sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts. Listen to this next part. Always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you. Be ready to share about the Lord who saved you, the hope that is in you in Christ. Be ready. But look how to do it. With gentleness and reverence. Now, 2 weeks ago, we shifted our mission location to Hendersonville. See, because I told them during the trip, I said, if we go on a mission trip and then we come back here and we're not on mission, that's not what the Bible says. It says we are to go and make disciples of everyone, everywhere. And so when we went to Hendersonville, that was a focus time in that location for a specific work, but we come back here and guess what? We're still involved in missions. The difference is we're not gathered with a group doing certain things in that regard. Like, you know, we went to the rescue mission. We went to the nursing home. We were at that church all week ministering to those children. Here, you're going to your school. You're spending time with your friends. You're on your team. You're in your job, wherever the case may be. And you might do some other things like we did in Hendersonville, but we're still on mission. The mission did not end. The mission continues until we're with the Lord, right? So, we're going to come up, the folks who attended the trip, and we're going to share with you some about what God did. Now, this was a very unusual trip. I've been 17 times, and there were things that happened this week that I have never seen. And I'm not going to talk about it because I'm going to let you have the floor. And then at the end, if there's anything I want to add, I'll do so, but I don't want to steal your thunder. But I do want to read this from Pam. She said, so thankful to be a part of this ministry. Hendersonville has been different each and every year. As I think about this past year, I'm thrilled how we were able to meet with and encourage and get to know the children that came. Low numbers are not always a bad thing, and I'm sure the youth will share some of what we experienced with that. Being in crafts, they are usually user-friendly, but this year myself and the teachers had to help, and we usually had just enough hands to help the children finish their crafts. Good job, teachers. My favorite part this year was serving in the different projects throughout the week. Working at the rescue mission in the storehouse was great. It was nice to be able to hear about the projects that take place each year from a worker that was there. They really help others in the community in all areas of living. As always, the trip itself is super. Glad to have been able to get to know some new youth. Hope to see y'all soon. Love, Pam. So first of all, I'm going to ask the 3 through 5-year-old class, which is Mary and Laurel, and then Soleil's out of town, but I'll ask the other two ladies to come up and share now.
Hey guys, so we had the 3 through 5s and 4 through 5s this year, so we changed it up a little bit. And I kind of feel like that was kind of the theme of the week, was changing it up. Everything that we thought was going to happen didn't happen the way we thought it was going to happen, and everything that we adapted to differently seemed to change. So I think the key to this week for the entire, that week for the entire youth group was kind of like flexibility, adaptability. I kept saying adapt and overcome, adapt and overcome. But throughout the week, I mean, even with our own class, I think it was the night you taught, that you got through the lesson, and we had to be open to what the Lord was leading us to say. And, they're young kids, so I could just hear God saying, no, go back to the basics, go back to the basics. So we kind of changed everything up at the very end of your lesson and just went back to the basics. And it was so amazing. Like, little kids, they're like, attention is everywhere. And, I kind of bribed them with lollipops in the beginning of every class. Like, if I give them a lollipop, they might listen, And so while they're eating their lollipops, we'd go through the lesson. But when we started talking about who God actually was, what sin was, what the Bible is, who Jesus is, why is there sin, why did Jesus need to be here, etc., in their terms, their younger terms, I mean, every kid in our class, and there weren't a lot, 5 that night maybe? I mean, their eyeballs were this big, and they were just all attention on us. And that, I mean, that's a God thing. That doesn't happen, you know. And we just kind of gave them the 4-year-old version of the gospel, but, you know, straight truth. And, you know, at the very end of it, it was just God in that room at that moment. It was pretty amazing. So later we're talking to one of them, and I said, you know, something to him about, well, what did you learn this week? And it's really funny because this little kid had my heart, but apparently every single other person that came across him in youth group showed a different side. So in our class he was fabulous, but everywhere else he was let's just say he had a big personality. So anyway, and some of that was just life. You know, life comes at you hard, you know, and when you're in some of these situations. So anyway, I'm asking him about, you know, what do you like to do in school? And he says, I love to learn. Awesome. What did you learn tonight? And he looks up at me and he says, I learned that God is real. And I learned that God is the truth. And that only happened because we were able to adapt and listen to what God told us to say.
Okay, so I'm really nervous. I don't like talking in front of people. But that little boy that she was talking about, his name was Legend, and he was such a sweet kid in our class. And we were really surprised when we would be in group time afterwards, and everyone would be like talking about these kids that were just like cussing and being horrible and like hitting their siblings and stuff. And we were like, that can't be Legend. Like, we didn't see that at all. And then me and Soleil were walking him home. He only lived around the corner. And his older cousin rode up on a bike and was like, hey, Legend, and like teasing him, and Legend kind of like smacked him in the face. And we're like, no, you don't hit faces. You don't hit faces. And his older cousin's like, yeah, you don't hit faces, Legend. And like calling him a punk. And then Legend cursed at him. And we were like, no, you don't do that. And he's like, oh, okay. And it was just really weird to see because he'd be such a sweet kid. And he would give us hugs, and he would just be so engaged, and he was so smart. And then the minute he was around his older siblings and cousins, it would be like he put up a mask. Like, just a mask of toughness. Just like you could see his posture would change. He'd like be like toughen himself up. And I was kind of heartbroken by that because he was such a sweet kid. But we were glad that we were able to share the gospel with him. I had the lesson of the crucifixion and the resurrection, which was really hard to teach to 4-year-olds because they could not really grasp the concept of someone coming back to life. They thought he was asleep. And so I kind of we did a few games. I did one of Soleil's games that she had prepared because the kids just weren't connecting with it. And then Miss Bond was like, okay, everyone come over here. And she gathered them into the corner, and she shared the gospel, and I was sitting in the back. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you. Because I was like, I don't know where to go from here. So Miss Bond really saved me because I was terrified. And it was overall a great experience. We had 5 kids that night, and they were just really sweet. They loved music. They loved rec, especially the slide. And it was kind of we didn't have any salvations, but I kind of expected that. No salvations. I lost a word there. And I kind of expected that because they're young, you don't know if they're going to grasp it truly. And so, but it was overall a great experience, and we had a lot of fun serving. And I now love kids more than I did when I started. So.
So now if our 2nd and 3rd grade teachers would come up, that's Cassie and Roger. And after they finish, we'll have 4th through 6th grade with Haley, and also recreation, Jesse and Iris. So after these two, we'll have Haley, Jesse, and Iris.
Oh, I'm going first. Well, I don't have a great track record with these share services. But I loved my kids, all 3 of them. We didn't have a lot, but the ones that we did have, I think they had a ton of fun. And my class, we had 2 kids that were reoccurring and then a new kid each night. First night we only had 1. But thankfully, my kids seem to have healthy family lives. I saw one playing with his family when we were doing the flyer passing out, and then I was on the bus route when I picked up the other. But the kids had a lot of fun. I really think they got the message across. I don't have anything else to say. It was just really good to get out and partake in the Great Commission and share the gospel of Jesus Christ with the young people of Hendersonville. And really just seeing the conditions the town is in really shows we have a whole lot more to be thankful for than we do to complain about.
So the kids we had, the 2 reoccurring were Gunnar and Isabella. Well, I called her Izzy the entire week, and she was cool with that. But well, actually, I called her Lily a few times, and that yeah. But they were both really smart. Izzy spoke up a lot, and she knew like all of the questions. Like, she had obviously like opened the Bible a lot and gone to church, and she was really sweet. And so is Gunnar. He was really quiet, but he still like would raise his hand and answer a few questions. I think what they really liked music. They would always participate in everything, but they really liked music and rec. Crafts they found a little bit difficult, but yeah, they seemed to have fun. And they would grasp the lessons like really quickly. Like, we'd be talking, and then like at the last track, they'd ask, "So what did you learn today?" And they still remembered it really well.
Okay, so this was my first time going to Hendersonville, and I learned so much on this trip. Ben and I taught the 4th through 6th graders, and they were a lively group. But I loved every second of it, and
There's a name that
watch the kids and see them learn was so amazing. I think my favorite night was the last night, though. Our class was in music, and Kenzie and Allie had a question of the day, which was, what will be the first thing you ask Jesus when you meet him? And this one question sparked so many other questions. And we even got like on the topic of the end times and the rapture and stuff like that, which was so great to talk to them about. And after that discussion, 4 of the little girls asked if they could be saved. And so we formed like a prayer circle, and we prayed with them. And that was so incredible to be a part of, and I love that so much. And so I wanted to say thank you to everybody on the trip. Everyone was so helpful and kind, and I'm just really grateful to have been a part of it.
So me and Jesse had rec, and that means we got to see every single one of the kids, mostly, some of them. And it was really nice to just, I had to step out of my comfort zone a lot. I don't like talking to other kids, especially younger than me or older than me, because we had a youth class. And it was just great to see them. We asked questions at the very end of most of our activities, and it was great to see them answer the questions, and like you could tell that they were paying attention mostly in their classes, and it was just good to see them open up, because some of them you could tell they didn't have a good home life, or just they weren't doing good in general, and it was just great to see them open up and to, I don't know what I was going to say, open up.
All right.
did a good job, Iris. I'm really proud of her. It was her first year going, and she just did such a great job with the kids. And I mean, she acted like she has done this like multiple times, and it's just the joy that she had on her face every time she would play with the kids, and you can just tell she just loved being with them, and just the fact that that she just, I mean, she has so much energy, so she was able to do a lot better than I could have, but she did a great job, and I'm very proud of her. So I've been going since I was in 7th grade, and this is like kind of like my first year of going. I did rec my first year, and so but it's been a while since I've done rec, so it was different, and I was leading the group instead of me helping someone. So just, I don't know, going through the week, just praying and asking God just to use me and Iris and use all of us throughout the week. And I could just see God working in everything that we were doing, even through the fun games that we had. You could just see the joy that those kids had. Going like to their houses was very heartbreaking, just to see what those kids go through. But just the fact that they could just have fun and be able to enjoy themselves, and I want to thank you guys, everyone that taught a lesson, everyone that did music, everyone that played a big part in Hendersonville. Y'all did a wonderful job, and as Iris talked about, when we would after the game, we would relate it back to the Bible, what they learned that night. We would ask them, what did you learn that night? And they would just be so happy to tell us what they learned, and they were able to tell us. And it just shows, maybe sometimes it feels like they're not listening, but they are. And so the fact that y'all came and that y'all spread the word of God is better than anything else we could have done. And y'all did a great job, and just God spoke through y'all. And so I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
So now we'll have the extra class, which is Philippe, Ryan, and Carly Ann. And what happens is, or what we decided a few years ago, was that sometimes a class can get too big. And so we need to have a group prepared so that we can split the largest class. And it usually is 4th through 6th grade. Well, this year we didn't have a class large enough to split. And so Ryan and Philippe and Carly Ann were all over the place. They served in many different areas, which I'll tell you about in just a minute, but I appreciate their flexibility. So y'all come on up, and then after them we'll have music and refreshments together, so Allie, Mackenzie, and Claire, and then the youth class will conclude, all right? So extra class, come on up, then music and refreshments, and then youth class at the end.
All right, so I was in the extra class with these two people, great people, and I don't really know how to address them. My fault, but it was a great year for sure. This was my 3rd year going, I'm pretty sure, and it was just one of the best years I'd say yet. One of the great parts about not having a lot of kids, I think we had 12 kids the first night, and it was just incredible because we got to invest individually in each one. And when only 12 showed up, I was honestly kind of disappointed. I was like, dang, I'm not going to get to be in the class. I'm going to be floating around all week, which I did. But it was so incredible to see how each and every different class worked together, and just how, like, I don't know, how Allie and Mackenzie, they did an awesome job in music. They would just bond the kids together. Miss Pam, she was sharing to the kids while she was doing crafts. I was in crafts one night. I was up in the youth. I got to hear Jordan and Christian, and I think some of Sydney's lesson, and just how well every class was meshing. And then the second and third class, I was in there 2 or 3 nights, and that was where I was at most. And it was just incredible to see everybody. And I was able to pour into kids like I haven't been able to do in past years, and just talk to them and get to know them. I met a lot of really nice kids that obviously came from tough situations, but they were awesome. They clicked immediately, and it was just incredible to just meet them. And also just along the way, there's never been a year where I felt like we were able to share and help out more. Every day was a different thing we could have helped out with. Like the first day, a car broke down, and my mom and Miss Anderson got them gas and pushed them off to the side of the road, and that was difficult. The second day, I don't even remember what happened. I think that was the first day of VBS, and then we went to the storehouse another day. We did 2 or 3 unplanned mission projects. We went to a nursing home that had been around for how many years, Robert? 43 years, and they had never had a volunteer group once. And we were the first volunteer group that they had, and it was awesome to just see the happiness on the woman's face, and just the whole thing was amazing. It was just, I've never been able to share more. And so this Hendersonville, I think, was definitely the most I've invested in anybody ever, and I strongly recommend the trip.
Okay, so this is my first year going. Whenever I'm like speaking, like right now, I get really like nervous and anxious and like talking to people and stuff. So I was really scared to do my lesson just because I'd never been before and I didn't know what to expect. And I literally wrote out every single thing I was going to say on a sheet of paper and just read off of it because I was so scared. But I had to put that aside and realize like I need to like not worry about this, it's about the kids. I taught about Jesus' betrayal and rejection. The kids really grasped it, it seemed like, and understood it, and just was really, really paying attention. It was like kind of sad because most of them didn't have Bibles, and most of them like didn't really understand everything or didn't know a lot that we know, that you just like expect people to know, I guess. Like I asked my class if they knew what praying was, and a girl said, when you close your eyes and ask God for candy and then open them and candy's there. And I was like, not quite. So they don't really understand everything, so it was really hard, like, not hard, but we had to start from the very beginning and just explain everything thoroughly. But I really, really enjoyed it. It was so much fun and a really good experience.
All right, so I feel like there's a lot that I could talk about. So I kind of want to bring back what Mary was saying about adapting. You know, I feel like that was kind of a big thing with this trip. We can start off with first day. Ryan talked about it a little bit, but we're over here handing out flyers to get people to come to the Bible school. You know, we going down this dirt road. It's one way, really bad road. There's this car that's just broke down. You know, and like being able to talk to them. Rob talked with them, share the gospel. I think. I don't know. We'd already walked away by that point, but you know, to experience that, and then later that same day, you know, at Donnie's house, we experienced, you know, talked to some really nice people and just hearing a lot of the hardships that they've been through. And yeah, it's a lot. Just like it's not even, like I couldn't even go into it how much it is. And I feel like we were reminded on this trip just how important, I guess just ministry is and how important it is to reach out to others. I guess we can get into that now. Ephesians 2:10 is one of my favorite verses. But what it says is that my words were a little weird there. But what it says is that we're God's workmanship. You know, his masterpiece is what we are. And what are we created to do? Created to do good works that he's already prepared for us to do. You know, and Hendersonville is this big, great works, you know. And this is kind of a plug for Sunday school. Recognizing when God is working and recognizing when God is answering prayers. You know, to kind of see that. So moving into the Bible school, I was supposed to do the extra class. I actually have never done the Bible school at Hendersonville. It's my 3rd year going. I always did the youth class. That's always what I did. But this past year, Rob put me in the extra class. I was fine with it because I love kids. but all our plans basically were up in the air when only 15 kids showed up the first night. And I mean, it worked out. It worked out great, which is awesome. You know, how we could have still been there for the kids even with having so little. And I want to just kind of commend all of y'all that went, and y'all did a fantastic, amazing job. So I was predominantly with two classes. So I was with the kindergarten, first grade, and I was with the youth class. I kind of flip-flopped between the two. I think me and Ryan kind of switched off, was basically what happened. But I mean, just getting to know the kids and how sweet they are and talking to them. So for most of the week, there was only 4 kids in the class. We went up by the end to about 6, 7, and we went down to 6. And just kind of investing in them, getting to know them. The youth class was really good. I mostly just kind of sat in the background. Most of the kids I actually already know from years past, so it was nice being able to talk to them again, see how things are going. While I'm up here, I do want to commend the people that I listened in on. I think we had some really fantastic teachers that went on this trip to teach. You know, I feel like the kids understood. I feel like the youth took away a lot. So I just want to commend y'all with that. I think that's mostly it. I do recommend y'all go to Hendersonville. It's a lot of work for a reason, obviously. But if you're interested, strongly recommend it.
Hey y'all, so this is my second year going to Hendersonville, and me and Kinsey did music this year. So one of the things, like, as I was reflecting back on the week and just realizing everything that God was teaching me, I remember back to the moment that Haley was speaking about when the 4 girls got saved, and I remember me and Kinsey just sitting there and just asking them the question of the day, and I never thought out of the question of the day we would have 4 kids that got saved, but I don't remember what the question was, but someone asked a question, and it was a little bit deep for their age group, and I didn't really expect that, so I looked over at Kinsey, and she nodded her head, yes, you should go into this, and that ended up getting 4 people saved, and that just taught me that, even sometimes when you feel like you have that voice in the back of your head, or you may be questioning yourself whether you should bring up a topic or not regarding faith, I just feel like you should always do it now from that, because 4 people got saved, and even though that was the number of people 4, which may not seem like a lot, but it definitely is, and heaven is still celebrating that. But that was a really big lesson that God taught me. And another thing that I got out of it was, so whenever the small group of people went to the storehouse, we went over to Donnie's house to give his grandma and Donnie's dad food and clothes and things like that. And I just remember at first I was standing off to the side and not really going over and having a conversation with the grandma. But I just felt like God was telling me, go over there and listen to what Robert was saying to her. And so I went over there, and I saw the pamphlet for her little granddaughter's funeral in her hand, and her just speaking about Donnie and how Donnie loves going to VBS, and Donnie loves going over to his grandma's house and stuff like that. And it just made me realize how grateful that I am and how blessed I am to be in this youth group and to be able to do these things, because life is so different for them down there, and sometimes I get so caught up in my day-to-day life that I don't even think or to pray about them, but their circumstances are so different. So yeah, if you've never gone to Hendersonville, I really do recommend it. It's a lot of work, like Felipe said, but it's definitely worth it.
Good job. My name's Kenzie, and this was my second year going. And what with Allie said and Miss Haley said, that was such an amazing time, because when me and Allie were planning what we were gonna do, I would have never thought that would have led to what it did. But I'm really glad that it did, and that was such an amazing night. But I also think that a bunch of the leaders did a great job with adapting and overcoming. Me and Allie were in the same room as Roger and Cassie, and they did such an amazing job with the kids and just saying things that would help them understand the lesson more. So y'all did a really good job, but also all of the leaders who came in our class, they weren't just standing there. They actually participated and did all of the songs and were acting up and all that. So I'm really proud of all of y'all, and I'm proud of Allie, and I'm so grateful to have her. So yeah.
So me and Miss Crystal were doing snacks, and the first night, like they said, we had 12, 13-ish kids, and we had made double for food because we didn't know how many kids we would have, and so we were like, well, we don't know what to do with this food, so we ended up giving a lot of it to the kids to take home in little takeout things because there's something they can make at home, but we had a great time. We had lots of good conversations with the kids. We were in the same room as music and Roger and Cassie's class. And it was just great to listen to them tell their lessons and watch the kids do music. A couple of the kids invited us over to dance with them when they were doing music. It was really cute. But we just had a great time. We made lots of food. I learned how to cook, and I like that. And I want to say I'm very proud of music for just, even though they had heard the songs they were playing for the kids 600 times during the day, they still were able to keep up that energy and pretend like that had been the first time they were doing it with the kids. And I know because I heard every song. And so they just had a great time with it, and we just had a great time feeding them and giving them a good meal and just letting them take a lot of it home, and we had lots of good conversations with them. So.
So I was with the youth class this year. I don't really know how I felt about it when Robert put me in the youth class because I knew that meant that I was going to have to teach kids older than me, which was kind of weird for me. But once I got in the class, we all were just talking, and it felt like we were just all together. And he put me in charge of the music mainly for that week. And so I went into it not really expecting them to sing or anything because, they probably didn't grow up hearing worship songs that we were doing. But they were actually singing and participating in worship, which was really amazing to see. And we actually got to have really good conversations with them about salvation. Going back to what Ryan was saying about going to the nursing home, we literally went in expecting to paint, and they had no paint or anything. They were just yeah, we really just need you to clean the windows inside and out. And we ended up just keep adding on the tasks. We mopped the floors, we cleaned the handrails and everything that were in there. So that was just a really cool experience, especially with adapting to what they had for us to do. And also the hangout time that we had as a group. It was just so much fun to grow as a youth group and just to get to know each one of the youth and grow closer together. So I definitely highly recommend going.
Am I the last person? Am I the last person? Oh, so finally we get to me. So no. I am Dakota. This is year 2 of Hendersonville for me. I did rec last year, so Jesse kind of took over my spot, which is all right. But I was in the youth class, barely. No, I'm just kidding. I was in there. I had to run sound quite a bit. And most of the other parts I was just going around taking video, but when I did sit in there and listen to who was it? Jordan and Philip and Sydney. Jeez, I can't remember names. I'm sorry, Sydney. But yeah, when the times I did get to sit in there, they did a great job, and they just, I feel like a lot of times in youth classes like that, the youth become disengaged at times, but from what I saw, they stayed pretty engaged. And I don't know if that was, well, I do know it's part on them, and probably part on the material too, which made it great. But one of the coolest things about the youth class was there was this Hispanic woman in there. Cassia, was that her name, Robert? Cassia, you don't remember? I think that was her name. But man, she sat in there every night, and she would pray back there. She would listen intently, and you could just tell she was so ready to just listen to the gospel being presented. But the last night, as was the night I teach, so it was Thursday night, and we were doing Matthew chapter 5, the Beatitudes. So I had peacemaking, and I had Philippe come up. I started beating him with a noodle. It was just a representation of how Jesus was being beaten, and he was still making peace for everybody in the world while being beaten. And I know they got a kick out of that, but that was the point I was trying to drive home, was that Christ made peace for everybody on our behalf with God. But yeah, that was just one of the funniest parts of that night. But man, so many people tonight have talked about the things these kids go through. Allie talked about going to Donnie's house, and that was a trip because his cousin Blaze, man, that was hard to hear about. She had got stabbed by her own mom, and I'm telling you what, man, just sitting there listening to that story, it's so hard to take in something like that. And how old was Blaze, Rob? Do you know? 5? 5 years old. 5 years old. That's a fifth of some of the ages of us in here. I think of the youngest, well, I don't know, 12. That'd be half your age for some people. If you're 12, 13, that's half your age. Somebody half your age is dying. It just goes to show you how short life is. And I mean, it was really just sad to hear, but there were so many great opportunities through that. We got to bring clothes and food, like Ali said, and all that. We just got to present the gospel so many times to people in that area. But I remember just so many times getting to see all the different classes and even rec and just going through there, and they did a great job just presenting the gospel, interacting with the kids, and just really living out Christ-centered worship and love and community with each other and with those kids. Yeah, I remember there was one night during worship. I don't remember whose class it was, but like I said, I had the video stuff, so I had to be everywhere. And somebody came up to me from our youth group and was like, "Look, one of the kids wants you to dance." I was like, "Dance? I can't dance. I got stuff to do." And so we get in there and I just happened to walk in at the time. I think Mary, I think it might have been your group. I'm not sure, but I just happened to go in there at the right time. And they were in there, and they were like, "Oh, you got to dance for this girl's not going to dance." And I was like, "Okay, I guess I'm dancing." So I'm sitting there, which it was fun. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if you can't have fun at music, then I don't know. You're not going to have fun anywhere else, I don't guess. But I mean, it just goes to show that anything you do while at Hendersonville, you got an opportunity to interact with the kids. You got an opportunity to show the love of Christ, and it's just one of the best experiences you can be a part of. And as 4 or 5 people have already said, you should go. It really is a step out of your comfort zone, which is what we all need all the time, is to be out of our comfort zone, because Christians in their comfort zone are honestly kind of worthless. I know that's kind of harsh to say, but if we're not going and making disciples, then we're not living for the Lord. So that's our mission. But it also tests your faith and your diligence and your duty and how much you really love others, because that's what ministry is. It's all, and that's what Robert told me. is ministry is all about people. So that's all I've got. Just remember that. Mike's all sweaty. I gotta rub it. Here you go.
Thank you. Everybody did a great job sharing. I just want to kind of cap it off by giving you a rundown of some of the things that we encountered. They touched on a few of them. It was gut-wrenching, some of the stuff that we encountered, and there were times where I just felt like crying. There's times where I couldn't speak because of the weight of the things that we were coming in contact with. And that's saying something as many times as we've been there. But the first day when we went on the blitz, we went to Donnie's house, and we meet a girl. And she said last night, she said, I slept in that abandoned building over there. She said, I'm homeless. She said, the only clothes I have is what I have on. She said she moved from California, said she had been raped by her grandfather when she was 13. She was raped in California and went to the hospital. She said she almost died. Somehow she ended up back in Hendersonville. She's related to Donnie's family by marriage. But she wasn't staying in the house. She was staying in some shack, abandoned place, whatever the case. And she said, I really need some clothes. So we took down her information and we shared with her about the Lord. And when we got ready to go, she came up and knocked on the van window. We were getting ready to pull off. And her countenance had just changed from how she was when we got there to how she was when we left, and just what the Lord was doing. There was a guy with her who is Rocky, and Rocky is Donnie's uncle, I think. And he said, I could also use some clothes. And he shared with us a little bit about his situation. Well, then the grandmother comes out, or she was already out there. And I've known her a long time. I didn't realize she was Donnie's great-grandmother. She's 81 years old. Her house sits right here, and there is junk over here and junk over here and just stuff all over the place. And one of the times we pulled up, there was about 5 different homeless people at her house. And we got out, and one of the girls said, hey, Robert. And she said, I'm Hannah Patterson. She said, I'm 18 now. It's a girl that we had in the Bible school, but when she said she was 18, she didn't look 18. She looked like she was aged very quickly. And I don't know if she was homeless or not. Some of the other people were, but she was over there with them. And so Donnie's grandmother is sharing with me and tells me that her granddaughter was stabbed by her own mother. She was 5 years old. She stabbed her own daughter to death. And just so bam, 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 here in all 3 of those situations, all at once, come to find out, the girl is Donnie's aunt, even though she was only 5 years old. She was Donnie's grandfather's daughter. And it happened in April and still hasn't gone to trial yet. So we're dealing with all of that, hearing those needs, sharing the gospel, seeing the pain with the grandmother and all she's going through, and just feeling that for her, because here is her house, and her house has got all this junk and all these homeless people hanging out. And on the tree, there's a tree to the right of her house, and it says on the tree, somebody like wrote with chalk or spray painted, be respectful or something like that on the tree. And she told me, she said, this junk right here, she said, my daughter got evicted from her house, didn't have anywhere to take her stuff, and that's all her stuff under that tarp. And she said, all this mess really bothers me, but I don't have the money to get rid of it. And I said, well, if you are not able to get rid of it by next year, we're going to get rid of it for you. So we dealt with all that, and then we go up and we go to what's called Corn Mountain Road. It is one of the worst roads you will ever be on. It's only one lane. You go down to the Quisenberry's house, you're actually going up, and we start to pull up, and there's a car stopped right in the middle of the road. And obviously the van's not getting by, so I go up and talk to the lady. She's like, I'm out of gas. She's got a young boy with her. She starts telling me how her boyfriend broke up with her, and she was living with him. She lost her place to live, and she said she was now living in a drug house. I talked to the boy. He said he was 18. He said that his dad was I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said he had to get away. Huh? 15? I think he was older than that. Okay, so he said that he had to get away from his dad, so he had moved off on his own and was living with friends. So we got to share with him and that lady, and then Mary and Crystal brought gas up there. And it wasn't gas that was a problem. There was something else wrong with the car. So that was another need that we encountered. So then, you look at these things and you say, well, these are interruptions. No, these are opportunities. What we see as an interruption is really an opportunity. And so later on in the week, we come back to Donnie's house, and the grandmother's outside holding the bulletin from the funeral. So then during the week, we get to go minister, and one of the places we go is a nursing home. And they had told me that it was rough, but I had no idea that it was going to be like it was. The building was run down. There was no sign out front that it was a nursing home, no sign at all. And there were people just sitting out in chairs underneath this overhang because it was raining. And they wanted us to just clean windows and do stuff. And you go in there and you think, man, this place is awful. But then you saw how the workers loved the residents, how they talked to them and cared for them. It was just amazing. And so I go in the back and I'm talking to the owner. And she said, 43 years ago, my husband and he felt the call by God to open this nursing home. And she said, we decided to sell our house to get the money to open this up. And she said, I didn't want to move. I didn't want to lose my house. She said, I went to church one day and was talking with a lady in my Sunday school class who's a realtor. And she said, I told her about the situation. And she said, by 4:30 that afternoon, she had our house under contract. And Jenny was like, all right, God. I didn't want to lose my house, but here we go. So they sold their house, opened this nursing home. That was 43 years ago. Well, about 15 years ago, her husband went downstairs to get coffee for her when they woke up, and he never came back. He died downstairs in the kitchen. So there she was, carrying on with this ministry. And she told me, she said, one of my workers has been here for 26 years. She said, one of my workers has been here for 16 years. And I'm sitting there going, they're serving in this place for that long? And she showed me the book of all the things they have to go through. And she said, you know what? She started sharing Bible verses with me and about her faith and how God had worked. And she told us, she said, which I know other groups have been there because I was told that kind of outside stuff. But she said no group had ever been inside the nursing home to volunteer in 43 years. And so to see the needs there and to see her faith and how God had used her to open that place up. And it was people that nobody wanted. There was one man outside. She said, that man right there has terminal brain cancer. She said, he's dying. And she said, that's his 89-year-old father. He drives here every week from South Carolina to bring him stuff. There's another guy in there who was 32 years old. Nobody cares about him. He's got some issues. One lady, she did a lot of drugs, and when she was 30, her mind just went. She's now 63. She's been in a nursing home 33 years. And you just saw these people that nobody cared about, but that these people loved, and they invested in, and that were important to them. And it was just amazing to see that. And then that first night of Bible school, when 15 kids showed up, that was the lowest amount of kids in 76 nights of Bible school. 76 nights we've had a Bible school up to that point. There was 15 kids. Now, by the end of the week, there was 43 or 44, something like that. And it enabled us to remind the youth of a lesson. It's not about numbers. It's about faithfulness. The success is not defined by numbers, because you can have a lot of people and not be faithful. And the youth learned to be faithful with whoever God brings, and then to watch him as he works. And also how sometimes we walk in a room and there could be 50 people in the room, but the people we're looking for aren't there, and we say, well, nobody's here. But it's just the people we're looking for. But God is interested in every person, and every person matters. And so just to see all of these needs, and we met as many of them as we could, but it was just heart-wrenching. And that girl that needed clothes, she stayed at 3 different places while we were in Hendersonville. I had to keep tracking her down so we could find her. And even when Crystal went to find her, the girl sent me a Google address, which was how to find her. And Crystal went there, and it was an abandoned house. And that wasn't where she was at. And we had to call her, and Crystal finally found where she was at. But she was on her 3rd house in 6 days that she was staying at. And so just to see all of these needs, all of these situations, and to see how the youth responded and were faithful was just a blessing to me, and it was unlike any other trip that I've ever experienced. And one last thing I'll tell you, just to show you what these kids are dealing with, we're going down the road, okay? And I don't want y'all to laugh at this. I want y'all to just see how difficult and how much these kids know. We're going down the street. It's me and 3 kids, and I don't remember who was riding with me. But kid says, that's where my grandma's wife lives. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm kind of like, what? And one of them says, what do you mean wife? Your grandma's wife? He said, she said she's a lesbian. And one of them said, well, what's that? And she said, that's where two women like each other, or something like that. And these kids I don't know how old these kids were. Y'all know what I'm talking about? How old were those? 6 and what? 6 and 10. And then they're talking about this, and then little Donnie's sitting there, just finished the 6th grade, or I think. And Donnie said, kids know too much these days. And I mean, I'm just, it's just like, man, what these kids go through and their family situations and the things they know about. And what I told the youth is, you're having an opportunity to give a biblical response, which they probably would not get otherwise. Because those kids do not go to church. I know the 2 we were talking to. They do not go to church. So, thankful for all God did, and look forward to continuing to minister into that. Now, I'm going to play the slideshow. Do y'all want to play all of it or just the half we missed? Okay. So we're going to play that last half. That, by the way, is the grandmother. And see that bulletin she's holding? That's the bulletin from the funeral.
In the darkness, in the trials, he's faithful and he's true. Your whole world's in his hands. todo va a estar bien. Oh, oh, oh. Everything will be alright. Everything will be alright. Oh, yeah.
That's Donnie.
Todo va a estar bien. Oh, oh, oh. Everything will be alright. Oh, oh, oh. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole wide world in his hands. Todo el mundo en su mano está. Todo el mundo en su mano está. Todo el mundo en su mano está. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Today. Said I woke up to the summer shining through. Calling on my friends, asking what's the move. Feeling a little different, I'm on something new. Today. I ain't gonna let no clouds get in my way. The only road I'm walking is the one I picked. Catch me sitting in the sun, no time for shade. Today. This is the day that the Lord has made. And I ain't gonna let it slip away. I'm gonna be joyful. Yes, I am. I'm gonna be joyful. Today. I'm gonna be joyful. Ooh, I'm gonna be joyful. I got that feeling that you get when you get new kicks. Bell ringing on the last day of singing, yeah. High-fiving everybody, but we out of here. Today. So fast, life comes and goes. Make it last, best slow your roll. They don't take it as a choice, but you gotta know that today's the day. This is the day that the Lord has made. And I ain't gonna let it slip away, nah. I'm gonna be joyful. Ooh, I'm gonna be joyful. Tuesday, I'm gonna be joyful. Yes, I am. I'm gonna be joyful. Today. I got the joy down in my heart, down in my heart. Down in my heart, I got the joy down in my heart, down in my heart, down in my heart. I got the J-O-Y down in my heart, down in my heart, down in my heart. I got the joy down in my heart. Today.
So whenever the video is ready, we'll show you the video. It'll be sometime down the road whenever we have time to show that in the service. Just a few announcements. Next week, we'll be welcoming in the new sixth graders. So hope you'll be here for that. Encourage them. Then we'll be going outside for ice cream. And then we have Sunday school, like always this week, breakfast from 9:30 to 10, and then classes at 10. And then in 2 weeks, we start back. Full schedule with everything. So looking forward to that. And that'll be 9 to 9:30 breakfast for youth, your parents, John's class, the college-age kids, and a few other folks. And then classes will be at 9:30 to 9:40 or so start. And then we'll have regular service at 10:45. All right? So that's all I got. So I appreciate y'all being here. I want to remind you to pray for Alex Spencer. He's got COVID and is in the hospital. And I was texting him. Cameron was as well. But the last 2 days, we haven't been able to get a response from him. So I contacted his sister, and I haven't heard from her yet. So I don't know what's going on. But he was doing better 2 days ago. So I'll let you know when I find out. And also, please pray for the believers in Afghanistan. If you do not know what's going on there, you need to learn about it and pray for them, because there's many believers right now who are losing their life. They're being killed by the Taliban. And so it's a tough situation. So please pray for those believers and for Alex. All right? Y'all have a great night, and we'll see you next time.